welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this special view into some great research and some great collaborative tools. So I'm going to go on and pass things on to Evan. Thank you.
Thanks, John. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Modell. So Dr. Modell holds a PhD in instructional design, and his research focuses on computer-supported collaborative work, which is often identified as computer-supported cooperative work in his particular field. He focuses on disruptive or dysfunctional group dynamics and how to effectively navigate them. His work on the topic has been published and presented internationally, and the CoLab online system and the supporting peerassess.info system throughout the scholarly work and has been used on 5 university campuses. This CoLab online system is in active use by instructors and students on this campus. And it's offered the opportunity to engage 7 students in our summer undergraduate research experience program over the last 2 summers, and 3 students are currently active participants in Dr. Modell's research group. So join me in welcoming our speaker for today, Dr. Micah Modell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I can live up to that. First of all, good afternoon. As was already said, my name is Micah Modell, and this is the topic of my talk. It's helping teachers, and I'm also a dad, so the bad dad jokes. Helping teachers say iROCk, supporting collaborative teams. Is this just making sure? There we go. All right. So I'd like to think that I'm decently smart and thoughtful and whatnot. But I really love to bounce my ideas off of other people to gain a fresh perspective on my ideas. And I love having a team that I can ask for help when I need it. And I often do need that help. I love being able to tackle bigger projects than I could be able to get done on my own, even if I had all of those skills, and hopefully I can get them done faster by working with other people. It turns out that educators in lots of fields do the same thing, right? I think, by show of hands, how many of you have not ever taken part in a group project? Anyone? Yeah, that's what I thought. So these are the same reasons why instructors use these types of projects, and they want students who also are going to be employable, right? Employers are also wanting these skills, and that's another important aspect of this. Employers want good team citizens, right? They want employees that can work effectively with their teammates, grow their skills by observing and helping others, and then synthesize diverse perspectives into innovative approaches to their work. Working with other people always complicates things, though, and it's not expected to make things easier. It should make the process and the results more rewarding if it's done right, but it's not designed to make things easier, right? So unfortunately, while we might dream of this sort of a situation, we're often met with students who report a suboptimal experience. And maybe this is familiar to you. It's the end of the semester, and one team member is reporting that while he and some colleagues have been working hard, one of their team members perhaps hasn't been carrying their fair share of the load, or at least they feel like they haven't been, right? I'm seeing smiles out there. And I don't think that those are smiles of joy. I think that those are smiles of, yeah, I can identify with them on that. That's not the only thing. Maybe the one with all the skills keeps getting handed more and more of the work because they're so capable, right? They have the skills, right? Again, maybe some of us tend to fall into that category. We wind up getting handed a lot of these tasks because we've shown that we can handle these tasks in the past, right? Then you're cruising for burnout. Or maybe one of us will feel oppressed by a dominating personality, right? In fairness, I'm afraid that I've probably been that dominating personality on probably more than one occasion. Quite frankly, a lot of us professors you don't really get to becoming a PhD without having a vision for how the world should work or how your research should work, and you might be susceptible to this. This has shown up in my research. And how often do we find that our work is met with maybe passable but uninspiring results that hardly seem worth all of the additional effort? Because as I said, it's not as though this makes things easier, right? It always is going to make things more complicated. We hope for innovation, but we were met with maybe replication, right? We were met with something that looks like it's the next one off of the factory line, right? The next one right off the conveyor belt. These are the problems that I am working to address, right? These are the things that I ran into and thought were kind of annoying. So who am I? As Evan pointed out, I'm an assistant professor here at the Mount. Before that, I was a faculty member at SUNY Korea over in Incheon, South Korea. And before that, I was a professional instructional designer supporting my graduate school habit. Before that, I was an enterprise software developer, which is really just a fancy way of saying I was a computer programmer. In all of these roles, I found myself working with and managing teams, and I've seen some of them live up to and exceed expectations. They've lived up to their potential. And then I've also seen them sometimes go pear-shaped. This is my team. Between the Mount and SUNY Korea, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of highly motivated students through independent studies and through the SHORE program. These are just a sampling of them, and the images at the bottom are just, it's not all of them, it's the people who I managed to get photos from. But these are also some of the work that they've been involved in. And hopefully this will make sense, and I will revisit some of this afterwards, but they've all been working on different aspects of it. In short, I'm representing educational researchers with strong technology backgrounds who've been gripped by these problems. And the designer in me, really in us, wants us to do better, wants us to be able to do better. So that brings me back to the root of the problem, which is how can we make our teamwork experiences more fruitful? And some questions along those lines, more specifically, how can we set realistic expectations for our teamwork while maximizing innovation and maximizing innovation and by maximizing diversity? And then how can we manage to monitor these highly complex systems that are highly interrelated, right? You make a change over here and it has an effect over here, which then has a ripple effect back where the original change started. How can we monitor this and help our students, help our teams to navigate these rough waters and keep them on track for success? So like any agile developer, which is basically a very iterative process, I started researching and prototyping, researching and prototyping, researching and prototyping. I started building and testing. And what I came up with is the system that I'm going to show you, something called CoLab.online. And in this presentation, I'm focusing primarily on the results rather than the underlying supporting research, right? But as you can imagine, this is my passion, so I'd be more than happy to discuss those things with you guys separately. I just figured that this is more for a general audience, and this way I can show rather than doing as much telling. Okay, so on that note, the system itself offers level setting simulations that the instructional designer in me has supported with team contracts. And you'll have to ask my teams about those. I'm not going to talk too much about them, but and then also dynamic course materials. I'll show you guys this in a moment. This is just sort of a little bit of an agenda. It also offers a mechanism for explicitly valuing diversity in teams by analyzing student characteristics and converting their perspectives that they offer into points, right? Sort of placing explicit value on the things that make us different, because that also provides value, those differences, those that cognitive conflict. Again, we'll touch on that in a moment. Last but not least, it enables the monitoring of team progress with weekly check-ins that are designed to be quick and easy for students to complete. It then visualizes that data for instructors to help them determine what sort of supports they might need. So to begin with, this screen, I know you can't read it, but this screen represents the interface for this teamwork simulations. And students who are working through these, right, this is the sort of exercise that gets assigned at the beginning of a semester, and it's designed to offer level set, right, to provide a shared experience. Everybody goes through one of these experiences. Everybody reads through 12 weeks worth of journal entry. And then they respond to it and say, is this group doing well or is it not doing well? Each entry or each set of entries is written by one individual. It's fictitious, but based upon based upon research. And each person is, we've got 12 weeks worth of entries with 3 distinct groups that have their own ups and downs. And there are 4 members, so 4 perspectives per group. So we've got, as I said, 12 weeks. Sorry, there are 12 sets, and each one of them has 12 weeks worth of entries. So each person is going to read through one of these, and then we all come back into the classroom. They give their assessment, they give their evaluation of it, and then they come back into the classroom for a debrief. And that works kind of like this. It's sort of a dynamic, sort of a slideshow presentation where I'm able to use our words and dig into it. Ask the students what was meant by that. Not the student individually because it's anonymous, but ask the class, what do they think was meant by this? And we can share those experiences and get some level setting going on. Understand that there are different perspectives involved, right? And it does so in a way that separates you out from these specific experiences, not talking about how your actual team member is frustrating you right now, but instead being able to talk about the fictitious team member and relating it to your past experiences, right? Giving you a less threatening context within which you can discuss these things which, quite frankly, frustrate many of us. Sorry, I'm supposed to go further. Okay, so and it goes through, and we get to walk through all of those situations, and then talk through those experiences, and that provides a great foundation from which we can start the semester, from which we can start this long-term group project that we're going to spend a lot of time on, and quite frankly, we're going to be frustrated by, and that's okay, because we can set those expectations. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the perspective points piece. And for this, I'm going to actually switch over to the system itself. But first, I want to point out some of the underlying ideas here, right? One of those underlying ideas is that cognitive conflict, right? Discussing ideas, disagreeing on ideas, that's a good thing, right? Because having that disagreement, I think we should go left. Well, I think we should go right. But left is the path that has lots and lots of footprints. Everybody seems to be going that way. Yeah, but maybe we can find better stuff, right? I mean, we know these stories and we discuss it, and then we come to consensus, or at least we come to a decision, right? And then we learn, we go through the experience and we learn, oh, well, actually your arguments were valid, or your arguments, maybe we should have listened to that more. And there's learning that happens there. But when I say, but you smell funny, it's not nearly as helpful, right? The interpersonal conflict, there's no real resolving that. And that's not helpful. And so we want to talk up we want to emphasize the cognitive conflict. And we want to do that through understanding, and that can yield more of an innovative perspective or an innovative approach to things. So now I'm going to switch over. Yeah, there we go. And sorry, this one's getting difficult to find. Okay, so this is the CoLab system, and I've already logged in on it. And this is a live system, as was indicated before. This is the actual system. And for this piece of it, what we're looking at is the diversity points piece. And if you go all the way down to the bottom here, you can click on it. But before we do that, I want to point out that you go into the profile. When you onboard onto the system, it's going to ask you for some demographic information. I'm not going to share any of that demographic information with anyone. I'll share mine, but I'm not going to share that. The system doesn't share any of that demographic information with others. But it's going to ask, when were you born? It's going to ask, when did you start college? It's going to ask what school you're in. It's going to ask for impairments. It's going to ask for the language that you speak at home. Assuming that if you grew up speaking largely Chinese at home, you're going to have a slightly different perspective than I did speaking English. And actually, I'm going to use this moment to go through and do the anonymization. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so now everything in here will be anonymized throughout. And so then I go in here to the diversity piece, and I put in an email address. And if I do that, it's going to go through and calculate the differences. What do I get? I get a 0. Why?
Same as yourself.
Yeah, I am me. Right? I mean, it's like identity in math, right? I am me, so I'm not any different from me, so I don't have any new perspectives to offer me, right? However, if I then add in one that I mocked up for my daughter, actually, then if I click this one, then it comes up with a score of 15, right? So how do I get those numbers? Well, there's a formula for it, and that is detailed here. If I come to this supported information website called peerassess.info, then I go to additional supports, and if you go to publications, that's where all of my references are. But if you come down here, it tells you how I calculate these things. So each gender gives you 2 points. If I have people from multiple different countries, then I get 1 point per state represented and 1 point per country, right? And it's just a simple addition, right? In some cases, I'm giving you standard deviations for things like age. The idea is to maximize the diversity, to maximize those differences, and to explicitly value the differences, to explicitly place value on what makes us different, and also to say, hey, we're gonna be different, right? We're gonna have different perspectives, setting that stage early so that way we can focus on the expected cognitive conflict and not unexpected and jumping us into that interpersonal conflict. So now the next piece of it is so those are the supporting sites, and I did that a little out of order. But the next thing is the weekly check-ins, right? So that's all of the stage setting, and I use that in order to generate a score, a target score, and to maximize the different perspectives in any particular group, right? And getting people to actually working together and having a level set, having expectations set beforehand. That's all good. But then the work starts, and then things start to get rough. And we all know that. We've seen this happen before. What I wanted to do with this was to, A, give all of the teammates a voice, right? To say, I want to know what you are seeing, and to validate everybody is having their perspective, right? And then the other side of it is I want to make it meaningful for the instructor, right? I want to somehow enable the instructor to support them. It's not enough to just say, hey, I want to hear what you have to say, and then walk away. I want to be able to actually help and see when there are problems occurring. So my goals for this system were to make those check-ins as unintrusive as possible. They should be quick, they should be simple, so that way they can become regular and habitual. And now I'm going to jump back out and come in here. And now we're going to go to that demo down on the bottom. And this is all faked situation, right? A faked setup. And this is what a student will see when they come in, or they'll see something like this. It's a calendar view with a bunch of activities that are possible. And the one that I'm interested in right now is this Superstars one, where you're doing an evaluation. So I click on this, and I'm going to see an interface that comes up looking like this. And it's going to ask you to evaluate your performance and your team, and basically reflect upon this past week. And you're going to get a reminder to do it, an email reminder until you do it. But it'll open up on, for a limited set of time, and you'll be asked to complete this. And then you go in, and it's going to ask you, how did everybody do? And I'm not used to seeing it nearly this big. But let's say this one is organizing, right? I helped to organize the group's work. So I was super organized this week. So I put this one up, and you'll notice that the other ones go down because it's a zero-sum game because we're a team. It's not me saying Micah's awesome, and it's not me saying that Robert is terrible. It's me saying that this is what we got done, and this is how we contributed to what we got done. Right? And Roberta, she was kind of way out there, right? She was totally disorganized this week. Okay, that's fine. Then we go into understanding requirements, and here's where I start adding some other stuff, some other color. And I say, well, yeah, I was super organized this week because I had no idea what was going on, and everybody else had to help me. And then I move on to suggesting ideas. And this is, again, I had no idea what was going on, so I couldn't suggest anything. But this is where Roberta really shined. She was disorganized because she was overflowing with ideas. She was just bouncing off the walls. So I'm going to put her way up here. Right? Now, down at the bottom, I allow for students to enter in comments, but I also, quite frankly, in class tell them I don't want them to write comments because then I feel like I have to read them. And frankly, everything should be covered up here. In reality, the comments are valid, but I don't want you to have to take your time writing this up in a qualitative fashion. I'd rather that you be able to do it quickly. This should take 5 minutes. And after the 5 minutes are done, you move on with your day. And then my work begins. So I hit submit, and it comes in. And then, as an instructor, I go in here and I get this reports view. Now you'll notice that this is automatically anonymized, or this is anonymized because I set that earlier. Normally, if I was an instructor, I'm able to see the actual data, but this is data, but it's not, it's not attributable to individuals. So I come in here, and I happen to know that because I've done these sorts of presentations before, I happen to know that some of these are interesting. This Looney Land Senior Editor, I don't know when this was, but I know that it's fun. So, and then let's take a look at this one. I do that, and that's my chart. This is everybody's representation of what was going on that week, their perspectives on what was going on this week. So you look at this and you think, okay, sure, that seems kind of interesting, right? Then we could go ahead and we can look at, and again, this interface is a little difficult to work with, but just because it's a lot larger than I'm used to, right? We go like that, and this one's more interesting. And if you look at it, you can see that in the beginning, there was a little bit of a rocky period when people were maybe adjusting to each other. And then you sort of coalesced, and then maybe there was, again, a little bit of interesting work going on, a little bit of a rocky time. Then we coalesced, we're working well together. Maybe there was a deliverable around here, and you can sort of see how the project probably progressed. Again, this looks okay to me. If we go on to Croatian jack spans, which are, I'm not sure what that is, but this one is a little different, right? And when you're looking at this one, it starts off, people seem to be dealing with each other pretty okay, but it doesn't stay that way for very long. And these little yellow dots, those are all of the comments. And if I look at those comments, then it says, I'll just summarize. It's basically saying Denise and Joyce are having some kind of a problem, right? They're not contributing. And so I can actually go in and say, all right, well, let's turn off Kathy and Alan and Edward. And we can see, yeah, they're underperforming. Now, again, I don't remember, I don't know which group this was because it's anonymized at this point. But I can look at this and I'm thinking, as an instructor, over here, all right, maybe things are just rough. Everybody can have a bad week. That's fine. Over here, I'm starting to get concerned. Maybe I'm reaching out. But over here, as an instructor, I am now empowered. And quite frankly, I feel responsible to reach out and try to help this group get back to good. Rather than working on trying to punish them at the end and saying, hey, you guys didn't get it. You failed, you were down here. I should be reaching out to them. Now, who knows? Maybe, I mean, this seems to have gone on for quite a long time. Maybe they sort of invisibly withdrew from the course. I don't know, but you can certainly see the story of what was going on. And you can see how, as an instructor, you would be able to better support your students by using something like this, or at least to be able to try to support students, right? By having insight into what's actually going on within those teams. So, the weekly check-ins are designed to provide people with enough information, both for the instructors to have enough information to really be able to support their teams and to be able to support them well. So that instead of making this punitive, instead of making what we know is going to be a difficult, challenging situation, right? Just from the fact that cognitive or otherwise conflict is never comfortable, right? We know that that's going to be the case, but we still can derive value from it. And we want to maximize that value. And we're probably not going to maximize it without supporting people. And certainly we're not going to be able to support people if we don't know what's going on. So what's coming, right? That's sort of what has been built. I actually have something else to show if we have time, but that's what has been built. But what's coming, what my team, and some of them are actually here, the things that are coming in the short term are an updated UI, right? And that's just sort of cosmetic, but it helps, right? If one of the goals is for this to be quick and easy for students or for teammates to complete, then the easier we make it for people to complete it, and the more visually appealing it is, the more likely it is to be helpful. A recommendation system, and that we've got, I've got two of my Shore students, Michael Glass and Maren Youssef are working on making sense of those charts in a qualitative fashion, or generating a report, a recommendation report based upon that data, analyzing it, figuring out what's going on, so that I can say, you know what, it seems like there's a disconnect here. Maybe you want to try this strategy. It seems like this is going on, or it seems like whatever, maybe you want to try this, right? And that will be going out to instructors and to students. Perspectives updates, right? And what that is the demographics that I'm using in order to calculate those perspective points. They're based in research, but they're my first try at, right? And those definitely need updates. Some things that have been identified are, issues with, I'm capturing gender and I'm looking at it as gender. And sometimes that can be challenging. That might cause somebody not to respond. What if I use pronouns instead, right? All of those sorts of things. And then what other information could I capture without intruding on people's lives and still be able to create value by providing this diversity? Because one of the major reasons why we use group work is to take advantage of the differences in perspectives, right? Not to put people together who are the same, but to get the different ideas. And then localizations, right? Making this friendly across languages. The system itself is built to support multiple languages, but that's all useless if I don't actually have any translations and I don't have any. And so now we actually have in progress a Spanish translation, which I think will be very helpful, right? Allow people to do this in the language that is most comfortable for them. And then in the later, in the longer term, we're looking at building out a mobile app version, and then a team recommendation system. So using that information about perspectives to, instead of just giving the option of giving a target number of points, instead I would like to be able to recommend, these are the teams, right? And this isn't going to be perfect for everybody, but these are teams that you could use and maximize diversity, right? And then you can maybe make changes off of that. That could be up to the instructor, but I'd like to empower the instructor to do that. And then improved charts. Some of the things that I have on there, they're a first swag at it, and they're still in progress. And then, wait, not less, more. Sorry, more. And then finally, I would love your help. Any of you who are interested in working with me, perhaps during the summer, clearly there are projects that are available, and there are lots of different types of projects that are available. And that's everything. I don't think we have any time for my Boy Scout slides.
We do have time for some questions. I will take questions from the audience. John at the computer in the back will relay any questions from any of the audience members at home. So I have a question, the weekly check-ins. I think it's really interesting to get students' perspective on how the group projects are going. I wonder if there's been thought about how students perceive how much work other students are doing, particularly, for example, the understanding requirements. It seems like there's a little bit of the necessity of students to guess how well other students are understanding. Some of them might be a little more straightforward. So how much do you take that into account when you look at some of that feedback?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, and a really good observation. When we're looking at it, one of the things that I'll be looking at is disconnects in terms of, maybe Richard thinks that he's understanding everything perfectly, and then Michael doesn't think that Richard is understanding anything at all. I'm not as interested in the understanding unless there is consensus on that. I'm actually more interested in probing that for more information, right? I'm looking at that as looking at the system as not trying to take the instructor out of the equation, not trying to actually identify the answer, but to say, you should start looking for these kinds of answers, right? So that's a very, very good point. And I don't think that we can know that. I don't think that, but the idea is to point us in the right direction. And also to be able to say, you know what, we all agree that this group is entirely agreeing that everything is going pretty smoothly, a little bit bumpy. But that means that I don't have to focus on team dynamics with them. Instead, I can focus on content. Instead, I can teach them, about molecular biology, right? Well, I will, but my mind. but allow them to investigate the thing, or allow us to investigate and focus instead of just fishing.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
We have a quick question from
We have a
the chat.
question from the chat. John will take over that.
Here's a question. Can students see comments that are put in and the evaluation from other group members?
That is an excellent question also, right? And one that I get regularly. And the answer right now is no. And the reason why, again, it's one of those things that's definitely on the wish list. I want to make that available, but the honest perspectives is paramount, right? If I think that you might see how I am evaluating you, then I'm going to temper that. And if I think that I am safe, then I'm going to give you my perspective. So I would love to do that. And that's actually that qualitative component that I'm trying, that is on the slate, the recommendations system that I'm working on building. That's what that's trying to address. And I have ideas in terms of putting together some kind of an aggregate number, or putting together some kind of a, with maybe horizons that somehow anonymizes it. But I just can't jeopardize I can't jeopardize the ability for the instructor to see what's going on and help. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. So I'm curious about the factors for diversity that you have built in and how easy it is to add or adjust those. So imagine the project is picking apples in an orchard, and you need tall people to reach certain places and shorter people to reach other places, and observant people to say, oh, you missed one, and lots of different factors. So how easy is it in this system to add factors for diversity? Tall, observant, bossy, or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which some people might call leadership, right? Yeah, so that's a really good point. And I think that there are two issues that you're bringing up there, right? How did I come up with this set, right? And then how could I update it if you don't agree with this set? So first of all, how did I come up with this set? I'm citing, I think, Goldfinch and Rayside from 90 something or other, I forget. And they're the ones who are for this one, not because they're the best, but because they were available. I actually have a project in place, and you've actually seen me embarking on this with my research team. We're embarking on, we've collected up over 1,000 distinct dimensions, right, and distinct ways of looking at the ways that our actions contribute to group work, right? The ways that that we can contribute to the proper functioning of a group that go beyond just doing the work, right? Just the immediately obvious component of it, right? And right now we're working on pulling that out and distilling that and validating it, right? And that is one of the things that's in progress. So this one I think is pretty good. And it actually maps to most of the other ones as well, right? It maps positively, but could it be improved? Yes. Could it be validated? Yes. Is it? Not yet, right? And none of the other ones nothing else is doing that either. But then your other question is, how easy is it for us to add? And that's also a two-part question. Actually, really easy to add them. The system is built, you can actually choose from 3 different factor packs that I have built right now. And if you wanted me to add another one, it's trivial. It's fairly trivial to do. But the system itself was designed to be content and task agnostic. And that's actually one of the big tasks or one of the big challenges in doing that validation work is how do you make sure that it really and truly is groups that we're looking at and not physics and not IT and not, critical analysis of literary works, right? Because there are a lot of those out there. There are a lot of things that are very task specific out there. And what I'm trying to do is trying to provide something to enable instructors, because this is the part that instructors really struggle with based upon research. This is what instructors struggle with because it's hard and it's complicated and everybody struggles with it. And there's not a lot of research out there on how to actually do that. So the simple answer is it's easy to do it. The more complicated answer is I would question the value in actually doing that. The other thing is doing that would in theory weaken the overall value of the system, because then I'm comparing apples to oranges, right? If you're measured on this one, then I can't derive as much understanding from the data that I'm collecting. Does that answer your question?
Another question back here.
Thank you. Have you considered the potential accuracy or lack of accuracy of the responses at the beginning when a student is using the system versus the middle versus the end? Is there like a learning curve and a comfort level where the data might not be as accurate in the beginning as it would be later? I'm just curious if there's research out there.
Yeah, well, is there research out there on it?
Or have you looked at
Yeah,
it?
not really, but it is definitely something that I've been thinking about. And there are a number of things in that, right? One is, first of all, yes. I mean, the simple answer is yes. The more you are, the more you're using an assessment system, the more you're going to get used to that assessment system, and the more you're going to be thinking about it. Also, in the beginning of the semester, you probably don't want to be nasty to your teammates, right? Or think about them. But at the end of the semester, and do I have a number of those, like that first version that I showed you, where it's basically a straight line all the way across? Yeah. Do I also have a whole bunch where it's a straight line all across, where everybody basically said, all right, everybody just say we all contributed equally. But then when push comes to shove at the end, then they start giving real honest opinions. I definitely have those. And looking at it in those terms, I'm looking at it in terms of supporting the instructors and being best able to support the instructors in supporting the teams and understanding what's going on in the teams. So yes, that definitely occurs. I think it's interesting to look at that across a student's entire career here, right? Or entire career from elementary all the way through college. I think that, and beyond, right? There's no reason why this wouldn't be applicable beyond. I definitely think that that's interesting. And again, there's the idea of trying to make it habitual. So it should become more relevant and more reflective of what's actually going on. But then the other question is, what is accurate, right? I mean, that's obviously the underlying question. Well, I'm asking for their perceptions, and I'm very upfront about the fact that I'm asking for perceptions, not an objective truth. And part of what's going on, as Evan alluded to early on, is if there are those differences, that doesn't mean that one is right and that one is wrong. It means that they perceive a difference and that that's something to dig into, and that that's something, perhaps a teachable moment. Perhaps you're not recognizing what this person is actually contributing, right? It doesn't give you the answers, but it tells you where to start looking. Yeah.
Any other questions?
One more in the chat.
We have another one in the chat.
Micah, it's Ludmila.
Hi, Ludmila.
Hi. My question is this a program designed specifically with a focus on cooperative or collaborative work, and for creating groups from the beginning and following them throughout the semester? I was lucky enough to be part of your research. I used this program during the semester, and students, we created groups for field work, but fieldwork was not the whole semester, or groups were working specific days. And when they were working, that's when they submitted reports. But when they were not collaborating as intensively as during the part when they were designing lessons, teaching lessons, and so on, so they were not reporting. So what was the idea or the main focus in creating this program and using it during the semester?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so the main focus, the impetus for building this was really to focus on long-term durable groups that are on a long-term project throughout a semester. And sometimes communicating that to a, that's arguably an instructional design question to, appropriately integrate it into a system. Now, one of the interesting things is that it does actually allow for multiple different groups, so that you could actually have a person in one group 1 week, or even in different groups simultaneously, and you can have projects that start and stop and change around throughout the semester. My modeling has not really looked at how to necessarily make sense of that data, and I think that Gina's question before about sort of onboarding and training has a lot of has a lot to offer, right? The answering that question and addressing that question has a lot to offer along those lines. It hasn't been the focus, sort of short-term projects, that has not been the focus of my research. And while I do think that it would offer value there, it again has not been the focus of my research. And so from an instructional design perspective, that would be something we would want to discuss further and refine further. I'm not sure if I'm actually answering your question. I'm sort of stream of consciousness thing that.
No, thank you. I just wanted to clarify this.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it is a very good point that I did run one class once where I had my students in 2 distinct groups. Every student was in 2 distinct groups throughout the semester, and I would never do that to my I learned my lesson on that. It was not fun, I think, for anyone. Sorry to them, but a lot of this stuff is experimental, right? It clearly offers value. The system itself offers value, but extending it beyond my intention, beyond what I initially intended it for, I think definitely it can offer value, but it requires thinking. And actually, it also, I alluded early on to support for employers, right? And professional teams. And I constantly get people asking me about this system and about applying it in professional contexts. And I love the idea of it. I think it definitely applies, but I also know that it takes a lot more thinking and a lot of adaptation that is non-trivial, right? Just the way that these things would be structured in an ongoing, at least, until you get fired, sort of a context, then, it requires thinking. And these things, just because they're both teams, it doesn't mean that they're the same thing. I mean, the assumptions are completely different, and we would expect them to be different. And they really do need their own consideration based upon that individual context.
Let's thank our speaker, Dr. Modell, one more time. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This was our last talk for this semester's iROC series. We do have our student poster session, which will be Thursday, December 2nd from 4 to 6 p.m. And that's going to be held in Aquinas lobby. So keep your eyes open on your email for information about that. Have a happy Thanksgiving.